Brett Powell, a Catholic leader in North America, someone I greatly respect, he recently wrote this. He said, "After 28 years of full-time ministry, I still get nervous when sharing the faith with others. My liver quivers, and I'm tempted to remain silent or just let the moment pass by." And when I read that, I thought of my own fears. I still have a lot of fears about evangelization. Evangelization means proclaiming Jesus to other people. Last December, the whole parish, we focused on inviting people to Alpha, the people we love to Alpha. And Alpha is a series of sessions exploring Christianity. So I invited some people, but not everyone. There's still a part of me that's very afraid. What if I'm misunderstood? Will this damage a relationship? I'm still afraid of taking the next step. And I recognize a lot of these fears are just in my head. If I think that the person is closed, then I get hesitant. But if I think the person's open, then I'm very confident. What are your reasons? What are your reasons to fear evangelization? What's holding you back? We're going to look at all three readings this morning to see what Jesus is offering us. In the first reading, it offers us a model. This is what we want to do when we talk about evangelization. The text says, "Philip went down to the city of Samaria and proclaimed the Christ to them. The crowds with one accord listened eagerly to what was said by Philip, hearing and seeing the signs that he did. For unclean spirits, crying with loud shrieks, came out of many who were possessed, and many others who were paralyzed or lame were cured. So there was great joy in that city." Now, there are two things happening right there. There's words and witness. So the first thing that St. Philip does is he uses words. And it says it so simply, but this is something that really challenges me. It says, he proclaimed the Christ to them. He proclaimed the Christ to them. He proclaimed Jesus to them. How many of us actually do that? We proclaim Christ. Now, it's really interesting. He proclaims a person. You know how a lot of people say that all religions are the same? We all have the same moral code? Well, of course, that's not correct because we don't all have the same moral code. And then Christianity isn't primarily about morality. What's Christianity about? It's about a person. St. Philip proclaimed a person because Christianity, it's about Jesus. And so, whenever we're speaking about our faith, if we speak about Christianity, Catholicism, and we never mention Jesus, we're missing the most important part. The fundamental message of Christianity, in Greek it's called the kerygma. Now, we've talked about this a few times. And the fundamental message of this is this. It's just in 4 parts. Can you listen to the essence of it? Number 1, God the Father has created us out of love so that we can be in relationship with him. Number 2, we separate ourselves from our Father, and that's what we call sin. Number 3, the Father sends his only begotten Son who dies out of love for us to bring us home. And then number 4, we're invited to receive his invitation to rebuild our relationship with him. Do you see in this central message of Christianity, it's all about people, the Father, Jesus, and our relationship with them? Now, there are 2 simple ways we often get this wrong. First of all, a lot of us, we talk to our children about our faith, but we tend to do it, we talk about the horizontal, the natural parts, the human parts of our faith. Be a good person, give thanks, help other people. That's good, but it's not enough. And it's actually missing the most important part of what being a Christian is about. Being a Christian is primarily about the supernatural, the vertical. So when we talk to our kids about the faith, we have to mention the Eucharist. That's the most important gift Jesus gave us, the gift of himself. That's where we become united with him. We have to talk about the goal of life. It's not just about being a good person. That's too easy. That's very minimal. We're called to become like Jesus, to imitate him. And then the second way we often get this wrong is we don't talk about the Father, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit. So a friend once told me, he said he knew another friend, a Catholic, who would only talk about God, but never about Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And his observation is that his friend didn't relate to the Father or the Son or the Holy Spirit. He only knew God in the abstract, and that's why he never talked about any of them. God's always in the abstract. Now for us, we know God, we know the Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit. And so we should talk about them, the persons that we know. I've told you before, I do these home fitness programs, exercise. And one time when Father Felix was here a few years ago, he's just a seminarian then, he's Felix at the time. And so I say to Felix, Felix, you want to work out with me and Tony? And he started laughing because he said, you talk about Tony like he's really there because Tony's the guy in the video. But that's part of the joke, right? As if I'm really there with Tony. Now that's a joke. But when I talk about Jesus, I talk about him like he's really there because he's really there. And so if you know Jesus, you know he's really there, you should talk about him. Okay, so that's the first part of what St. Philip did. He used words, he proclaimed the Christ. But there's a second part he did. It's witness. He actually loved them concretely in a way that they could understand. This is what the text says. Unclean spirits came out of many who were possessed, and many others who were paralyzed or lame were cured. He's actually loving them in a way that they can experience. See, most people need to experience Jesus' love in a concrete way. So exorcisms and miraculous healings, they still happen today. You might want to try some exorcisms at your work. Do some exorcisms on your coworkers or your boss maybe. But what we actually have to do is we actually have to try to heal people, not just their bodies, of course their bodies, but we want to also heal the soul. We want to heal the spirit. And we also, when we talk about casting out demons, we're also talking about casting out people's fears, their anxieties, their depression, their loneliness. And so we want to love people concretely. When we talk about evangelization, we want to listen to people, love them, challenge them. We want to encourage them. So that's our model of evangelization. That's what St. Philip did. But you and I, we have these fears that are holding us back from doing that. So I want to give you two quick ways that of things we can do so that we can imitate St. Philip. Now here's the first one. It's from the second reading. St. Peter begins, "Beloved, in your hearts, sanctify Christ as Lord." That's really interesting. What does it mean to sanctify Christ as Lord in your heart? Well, another translation says, reverence Christ as Lord. So all of us have these false gods in our life that dominate our attention. It could be other people's opinions, having fun, pleasure, etc., etc. And what these things do is when they dominate our attention, they prevent us from evangelizing. Now, Bishop Barron, he asked this question. He's asking the question about Jesus being the Lord. He says, do you realize that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead? Therefore, he's the Lord. And therefore, your whole life has to be situated around him. And that means your country isn't Lord. He gives a few other examples. He says, no other figure is Lord in your life. So I've got these fears of evangelization. And so what I always have to do is I always have to say, Jesus, can you be more the Lord of my life? Can you dominate my heart and my mind so that it casts out my fears and I can proclaim you? I can be more confident and courageous. The second way to overcome our fears, in the gospel, Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth. So if we love Jesus and we follow his command to proclaim him, because it is a command of Jesus to share him, to share his life with other people. If we do that, the Holy Spirit's going to come to us. Now, Jesus says that the Holy Spirit is called the advocate. Now, in the Greek of the New Testament, the advocate, that word means literally one called alongside. So, if we start taking the next step to evangelize, the Holy Spirit's going to come to our side. He's going to help us. So, what I'd encourage all of you to do is you have to get out of your comfort zone, take the next step. And when the Holy Spirit comes to you, you're going to realize it's not all on us. Like, we have to do everything. We do our little part, and the Holy Spirit works in our hearts, and he works in the hearts of everyone. I'll give you an example of how this works, the Holy Spirit coming to our side. A few years ago, I told you I was discerning about wearing the cassock. So the cassock is a long black priestly robe. And the question I was kind of discerning is, should I wear this all the time? Because the idea was I was going to wear it all the time to inspire young men and women to think about priesthood or consecrated life. But I was still hesitant. And I asked a friend of mine, she happens to be a fashion designer. I trust her judgment. And she said, I think it might separate you, it might distance you from other people. I keep on praying about it. And the Holy Spirit reminded me. Jesus says that the Holy Spirit today is the Spirit of truth. The advocate is the Spirit of truth. He'll remind us of the truth. And the Holy Spirit reminded me, why am I doing this? I'm doing this for vocations. So I took the next step and I just went out and I wore it all the time, restaurants, airports, hospitals, everywhere. And it's been so fruitful. The Holy Spirit's come to my aid. I'll give you one example of how this worked. When I was in London, England for this Alpha conference, I'm with all these Protestant pastors. And the thing about Protestant pastors is they're very cool. They're young, they're fashionable. Some of them have all these tattoos. You know, they wear baseball caps. So they look very fashionable. And I'm the one with the long black robe. And one time when we were walking through London, very busy streets, we're walking all together, 16 of us, and I kept on getting stopped by people on the street because they want to talk to the guy in the cassock, the black robe. And it started to become a running joke with the Protestant pastors. They would go on ahead, and then they would turn around, they'd look back, and they'd see Father Justin stopping and talking to people because people want to talk to me. And I was inviting people to Alpha. And one of the Protestant pastors said, man, I should get a cassock too. So if you just get out of your comfort zone, take the next step, the Holy Spirit will come to your side. He will remind you of the truth. And there are two other truths he's going to remind us of. Okay, first one. When we proclaim Jesus to other people, there's going to be rejection. People will reject us. Okay, you got to go in knowing that. But it's not going to be as much rejection as you think. 15 years ago, a priest named Father Roden from the Brooklyn diocese, he told me this story, never forgot it. Very much encouraged me. And it's a story about Ulysses Grant, the 18th president of the United States. He's an American soldier, then he became the president. And in his memoirs, Grant writes this story. On the evening of the first day out of Goliad, we heard the most unearthly howling of wolves directly in our front. The prairie grass was tall and we could not see the beasts, but the sound indicated that they were near. To my ear, it appeared that there must have been enough of them to devour our party, horses and all, at a single meal. Benjamin understood the nature of the animal and the capacity of a few to make believe there was an unlimited number of them. He kept on towards the noise, unmoved. I followed in his trail, lacking moral courage to turn back. He asked, Grant, how many wolves do you think there are in that pack? Knowing where he was from and suspecting that he thought I would overestimate the number, I determined to show my acquaintance with the animal by putting the estimate below what possibly could be correct. And I answered, oh, about 20. He smiled and rode on. In a minute, we were close upon them, and before they saw us, there were just 2 of them. They had made all the noise we had been hearing for the past 10 minutes. I've often thought of this incident since when I have heard the noise of a few disappointed politicians. There are always more of them before they are counted. So the Holy Spirit will remind us of the truth. We have all these fears on our heads about why we shouldn't proclaim Jesus, but they're not as many as we think. We think, oh my goodness, it's such a great reasons why I shouldn't do it. They're not as strong as we think. And the second truth that the Holy Spirit will remind us of is that God never made a person he didn't love. Every person matters to him. When Jesus stretched out his arms on the cross, he was saying, I love you this much. And so if ever we feel apathetic or hesitant or reluctant to evangelize and proclaim Jesus, what we have to do is think about Jesus dying on the cross. He was dying for you and me and everyone. He was thinking about everyone who has ever lived, everyone who has lived, everyone who will live. And Jesus wanted to reach everyone. And so when we think about Jesus dying on the cross, we'll want to reach everyone too. Today, which of the two actions do you need to take to overcome your fear? Is it one, reverencing Jesus as Lord in your heart? Once you do, you'll have more courage. Or is it two, just taking the next step to evangelize? And there are many different steps we can take. A lot of us have to be better friends to the people in our lives. We have to love them more authentically. But we also have to proclaim Jesus to them. We have to invite them to different events at our church. We should pray for them, but also say, can I pray with you? Would you like me to pray with you? Or you can tell them, I'll pray for you. All these little next steps to evangelization. That's our question today for the online chat. You have two choices. Which of the two do you need to overcome your fears? And I'll tell you right away, I need both. I need to reverence Christ more as Lord in my heart, get rid of those other thoughts, and then I need to just get out there and take the next step. We're starting our online alpha June 4th and 6th, a Thursday and a Saturday. And what I'm asking all of us is, can we invite the people we love to this online alpha? Think especially of people who are searching for God. A lot of people searching for God right now in this crisis. Think about anyone you know whose heart might be far from God. And be courageous and ask them, invite them. Saint Philip is our model for today. He reverenced Christ as Lord in his heart. And so he just went to Samaria, he went out and he evangelized, he proclaimed Christ. And then the Holy Spirit, the advocate, came to his side, the Spirit of truth, reminded him of the truth, and that took away his fear.